Concept versus iteration. This is one of the biggest things we really need to get down to when doing creative testing, and also when we're trying to get stability for our ad account and ultimately finding incrementality or more efficiency. We need to understand the difference between concept and iteration. You see me reference this a lot, especially when it comes to creative testing, especially when it comes to planning, and especially when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do for the next 60, 90, 100 some odd days to your business. Because honestly, you should never be managing your Facebook account day to day. That will make you rip your hair out. So concept versus iteration. What does it mean? How do we apply it? And how can you do this so that your hit rate on new advertisement goes massively through the roof and you can ultimately begin to understand whether or not you want to see more scale in your spend or more efficiency with your budget? Let's go! First off, thank you so much for watching this channel. Sometimes I come across as an aggro guy. I'm really a nice guy, and it means the world to me that you are sitting here listening to this. I'm literally looking at my YouTube right now, and the hundreds and hundreds of hours of video that you all are watching means the world to me. So thank you so much. Also, if you find any of this to be valuable, which, I mean, if you're watching for 300, 500, 1,000 hours, whatever, maybe you do, it would be awesome if you subscribed, or more importantly, share it with your friend. You know, this platform prefers people who get folks that watch videos and stick around and watch another one and like comment on videos and engage. So let me know what you think about these videos. Give me your hot take on you know, concept versus iteration. Let me help you understand how to apply this stuff by answering your questions. And if there's anything else I can do to help you, believe me, I will try to make new videos or answer your DMs or come back in the comments. And stick around to also, you know, subscribe so that you can be present during our live classes that we do every single week, where I just basically give a lesson, then open it up for your questions on anything you want. It's a weekly AMA, and you're going to miss that if you're not subscribed. So, all that being said, concept versus iteration. Now, at a very high level, what we're getting into first off is planning of creative. However, it's also planning for your landing pages. It's also planning for your emails. It's a way of organizing all of your testing across your entire business. Facebook ads be damned. With that being said, what we really want to try here is to understand insight from our creative testing. So when I'm talking about concept versus iteration, what we want to do is say, is this a different idea? Or is this the same idea in a different way? But we also want to be able to ultimately go back and find directional information from this data. And what I mean by that more than anything is, can you make a decision because of this? So it might be as simple as images versus videos. For you, that might be a concept, because you can make videos that feel a certain way and you can make images that feel a certain way. Now, if you're making images, the odds are they all probably tend to look and feel similarly, because if the deciding factor before you're creative is if there is motion or if it's a JPEG, if you're advertising with NFTs or you're just going straight to MP4s, that's okay. But what it means is probably because you're doing that, you have fewer resources. And maybe for you, just knowing whether or not to message with images versus videos is a great bit of insight. Now, we get ultimately some downstream effect of that is if we can only do images versus video, and maybe we find images work. Great. That's a concept. So then we try different types of images. Well, you might think, well, those are iterations on that image. Well, it might be, but if those images are vastly different in look and feel and sales pitch, they might not be. And what I mean by this is, if you have an image, if you're trying to sell dog food, right? And you've got an image of like a Great Dane out in the middle of the park, having a blast, jumping in the air, and then boom, brand label. That's great. Maybe you have it also an image of like a Chihuahua just at the bowl. That's great. Maybe you have a cartoon. That's great. Or a comic. Great. Those are very, very different ways of presenting that sales pitch. So eventually when you get down into one concept, you might think, well, these are all different iterations, but if one type of ad is going to appeal to a different type of individual, then that could be a different concept. And really what I'm trying to use that example is to let you know, there is never a set demarcation between concept and iteration. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is determine, can we reach this same person in the same way? Or do we want to try to reach different people? And that's the biggest thing. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've gone through stuff and felt like, hey, we're testing 5 different concepts. Just to take a look back and realize, well, all of our copy could basically be applied to every single image or video that we're using. And they're basically all hitting the same point. You know, get this ebook and you get this thing for free to get this other, like we are smashing the same sales pitch on everything. We're saying it 20 different ways, but it's basically the same concept. And I can't tell you how many times we thought we were doing iterations, but it was just a ton of different concepts. We're like, well, we're using UGC. Great. But some of those UGC were videos where people were like giving testimonials. Some of those UGCs were just compilations of a bunch of images. Some of those UGC was somebody just holding the product, looking sexy. Those are wildly different sales pitches. My point is, ultimately what you're going to find between concept and iteration is that concepts tell you what direction to go into. And you can make many different iterations of any concept. But sometimes those iterations become so nuanced that they ultimately become their own piece, right? So let me give another example. You might be a vegetarian. If I have a concept, or you might be somebody that likes to eat meat. Now that concept is very distinct, meat or vegetables, right? Very distinct. Now let's say you're a vegetarian, so you don't like the meat at all. And so then you would say, well, every ad that shows meat is in the meat concept. But we know that's not true, because there could be an ad for like an Oscar Mayer wiener, and then an ad for like, you know, Taco Bell, and then there could be an ad for, you know, $1,000 steak. Wildly different sales pitches. Wildly different experiences. Now, maybe the price point is the same on all of them, but one of them is selling, you know, really like fancy looking hot dogs, and somebody else is selling some really great cut of beef, and somebody else is coming in here with the best fillet of fish you've ever seen. All of those are effectively different concepts. Now, it's one niche down, but when you open up a folder on your computer and there's a bunch of new folders, those are now iterations on that one primary concept, but each one of those could be different concepts from each other. And I'm trying to explain this in 3 or 4 different ways so that really drives home. Now, why is it important? Let me drive home why this is important. More than anything, what we really want our concepts to deliver is creative insight and decision making. Now, why is that? Because ultimately, what concepts allow you to do is plan long term. If you want to plan for the next 3 months or month or 6 months, you might say, what I really want to do here is scale my spend. Great. That's a different direction to go into with your concept and your iterative testing than to say, I basically have a budget, but I want to get more and more out of this dollar. right? I want to get 150 sales instead of 80 sales for every $10,000 I spend or whatever. The solution to that problem is wildly different. More ads of the same concept generally gives you a more stable result, a opportunity to improve efficiency. Because basically you're saying, you've come into my car dealership and, well, I've have ads for a sports car and one for a sedan and one for a minivan. You want the minivan? Great. Well, because maybe I've already determined that you're a minivan buyer, I've got 5 different ads for that minivan, and I can put the right sales pitch to the right buyer, and I'm going to get you for cheaper. That's a perfect execution of the idea of how iterations on a concept can really sell something. Maybe it's a lowest cost buyer. Maybe it's a made in America buyer. Maybe it's a highest quality buyer. Maybe it's a quality of ingredients, or whatever the thing happens to be, whatever your sales pitch is. If you give that buyer several different ways of being sold to, all of which are selling them in the way that they want to be sold to, then you can also hit them up in several different versions. Because remember, all of your ad sets are also doing retargeting. So you're hitting that person not with, is this the right ad for them? No, because the right ad, the best ad, the ad that's going to make it for you is a bunch of bullshit. Less than any amount of something you can name off of on your hand are brands that have been made by one ad or one concept. It just doesn't happen. The unicorn situation, and we know the Harmon brothers have done it twice. Awesome for them. And they're very talented. My point is, even those ads have iterations of them. What I'm getting at is, if you want to drive down your efficiency, basically get more and more bang for your buck, what you need is more variations on a single concept. You want to try to approach the right buyers in the right way, because what also is going to happen there is that buyer is going to see a bunch of different ads that are all kind of focusing on the same thing. But it's also going to help your business. You know why? Because every single person that walks in your door is basically responding to the same type of advertising. And the same type of person that walks in your door basically responds to the same type of advertising, then your rebuttals to those are all going to be the same. And if all of your buyers have responded to the same rebuttals because they're all coming from the same type of advertising, from the same type of concept, what do you think happens to the effectiveness of your email? It goes up because everybody behaves the same. You're getting more and more efficient, but you're not really expanding the type of customers you have. But that being said, you could easily get to $1 million a year ad spend on 1 or 2 concepts. I'm selling minivans and I'm selling sports cars. When you walk in the door, I know you're either one or the other. And I've got everything I need from your first click down to your 10th sale figured out. Or you could say, look, I'm not worried about efficiency. I want volume. I want to reach as many different types of people so that I can make as many different sales as possible. Now, for what it's worth, this is generally the path of far more resistance and generally leads people into a life of ruin, but it is also how you make things work if you want to scale up your spend. Eventually, there's only so many people that are going to buy a certain type of thing, right? Geico had the cavemen and the gecko. You know what I'm saying? Either one of them could have been around. That gecko's obviously outlasted the caveman. But the point is, different ads for different people. Different ad campaigns, basically, for different people. And you can think of every iteration of an ad as another element of an ad campaign. Not a Facebook campaign, but an ad campaign. Like, these are a bunch of assets that all look and feel the same to try to sell the same type of person on many different mediums. Remember, Facebook is a bunch of different mediums. And you're reaching the same person on a bunch of them. Now, if you want to scale your spend, ultimately, you're going to have to reach new types of people. If you want to reach new types of people, you need new sales pitches. Because remember, every single ad is a landing page. Facebook is measuring the bounce rates of every one of those landing pages. It's also measuring the click-through rate. It's measuring the effectiveness. How happy are people? And so every concept is basically going to cluster around the same section of people over here, right? But you make a new concept and maybe it clusters around these people, right? So over here, you got the lowest cost. And then over here, you got the highest quality. And then scattered down here, you've just got the other people that may or may not buy anyway. Point is, if you can find two concepts that are great, you could theoretically spend more than twice as much money. Because there's some people where those might not be the ideal, but seeing both things gets them. Now, it's more volatile because maybe you spend all of your money on the lowest cost, and today it was just all about the highest quality people. But that's why you don't use ad set budgets. That's why you don't run a million different ads and a million different ad sets and try to micromanage things based on information that is not 100% accurate, that is not complete, that it was yesterday, and you're basically trying to play reactionary games to lottery picks. It's like saying, hey, that person hit the lottery yesterday. I'm going to run that number today. It worked for him. It's not going to work for you. There's a reason why this fails for every single person that tries it, because it's fundamentally the wrong thing to do. So, to recap, a concept gives you insight. An iteration is a variation on a concept to drive efficiency. More concepts, more risk, more volatility, potentially more market. So that becomes the risk that you want to ultimately take down in your planning. Concept versus iteration. Hope that helps. Anyway, YouTube thinks you might like these things here. And if you really enjoy this stuff, go ahead and subscribe. Come on, give it a whirl. Hit the button. Hit the button. All right, other than that, my name's Charlie. I hope you guys have a good time. I'll see you on the internet.